Hey everyone, Vimal from Crook Software here. One of the questions we've been getting a lot is how are folks using AI in real estate? And one of the more common use cases we see is lease abstraction. So wanted to take a quick tour, show everyone how they can use AI for lease abstraction, how they can build it themselves, and just sort of the best way to do this. So go ahead and get started here. The first thing you need, to build this out would be a commercial lease. So, not everyone has their hands on one. One great way to do this is to use AI to create a sample, a commercial lease. So, we could say create a complex commercial lease for real estate. And what gets generated here, you can go ahead and just copy and paste into Word and export as a PDF. So I created one. I had it actually fill out some information. So we're going to get a pretty relatively detailed commercial lease here. The information that's been completely made up, but generally generate will help illustrate the point on how to do a lease abstraction using AI and mainly using the API so you could actually grow your own. So with this file saved off, the next step is to use a combination of Python and the OpenAI API to generate some code do this for you. So without getting too far into the details, here we have an Azure function that we built that uses the OpenAI API. And just some key things to note when you're building this out is, you're going to need to get your OpenAI API key. But the logic in here is you do want to sort of give it guardrails in regards to how the data could be outputted. Otherwise, you're going to get different outputs every time you parse the lease through. So similar in the past, if you're on the front end, you could come here and you can upload a file and say parse this lease, and it does a great job. But again, you don't want to do that by hand every time. So you do want to build something programmatic, which is why we put this into code. So go into code, create a JSON structure. And again, you could use AI to do this to say, give me a JSON structure, an output of a very detailed commercial lease and different outputs. And you go and then also, you can add as much as you want to this. This is going to let the output know how do you want your data formatted and what is it looking for as it parses through your lease. There's some code here around, parsing PDFs, Excel files, CSV. So we're not limited to the file template, but you'll have your instructions. And again, this is where continue to enhance this and making sure there's more rules and more evals to make sure you get the right output every time is how you want to be careful what you put here. And overall, once this is working, when you initially build it, you'll want to build it in Python and test your outputs. But again, unless if you want to make this a little more flexible, you do want to come back and wrap this into an API call. So when you call the API, the output comes back. So what you're seeing here, we built an Azure function, we passed it to commercial lease, and you'll see that the output comes back in JSON from the call. So you could do a lot with this. You could put this back in Excel. You could integrate this into your other systems. But a good way to see this is see this live in action. So what we did is we baked this into one of our apps here, and we can sort of see this in action here. So let's go ahead and browse the file. We'll grab the sample commercial lease we have here, and we'll go ahead and process. And what's happening behind the scene is that the API is being called. It's doing all the parsing. It's putting it into the exact rigid JSON that we like. It's going to output it here hopefully shortly. Some enhancements that you'll want to build in the future is be able to mass upload many CSV files or leases and have to do all the abstractions at once. Um, this service by hand usually costs about $20 for folks usually outsourcing lease abstraction. If you build this API out, you could bring that cost down to a few dollars or a few cents. So you definitely see the power of leveraging AI here just for this. And I think normally what we're not seeing behind the scenes is that you put this into Claude or OpenAI, you'd see the lease being generated. So that's happening behind the scenes. We only get to see the output when it's done, which is here. So you'll see that it went through and it's just outputting what came back in the JSON. And it did strip out a lot of the information that was in that lease and has it spit it back out. And we got a lot of great information. And again, what we can do next here is create a process that either ships this file to an SFTP for processing, or puts an Excel file that you download it. But again, sort of the sky's the limit. The AI's done a lot of the heavy lifting. No need for OCR anymore. No need to ship these overseas. We could do everything with the OpenAI API or the Claude API, and it's just super powerful. Hope this makes sense. And shoot me a note, comments if you have any questions.